What's up, NBA fans? The playoffs are finally here. Thank you for joining us tonight. The NBA playoff preview series, Eastern Conference style, with the OTG crew. Harris Wichard here with Nick Fay. What's going on, Nick?
Harris, we're finally here. The playoffs have arrived. No more regular season talk. It's all about championships now.
Yeah, you know what? Throughout the regular season, a lot of with the rest talk and everything that was going on. So the regular season, I think, was compelling, but from a casual perspective, from most I'm hearing from a lot of my friends, is that finally to get through that November to April grind, and finally the excitement is here, and a lot of people will be tuning into this.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, I've heard that from the casual fan too. People complaining about the rest or the games don't matter. I mean, I can see the point somewhat, but I think the games do matter. The last few nights of the NBA season weren't that entertaining, so I'm definitely looking forward to Saturday, though.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody's resting. The Nets do it, and they catch a lot of hate for it because of the position they're in. But I know you're tired.
Real quick, because I've seen a lot of hate on this, and I just think it's so stupid. Like, first off, teams shut down their big name players all the time at the end of the season. The Nets didn't do it this year. They shut down Thad Young and Brook Lopez for the last month of the season. Nobody complained about it. Yeah. And then also the fact is the Nets have a lot of guys on the roster that they want to see play, and they want to know, are we going to cut this guy this summer, or are we going to keep him? So obviously they want to use the game to look at players. And then for the other fact is, if the Pacers, there was some implication if the Pacers didn't make the playoffs, the Nets would get their second round pick. So obviously they want the Bulls to win if they're going to get another pick from it, especially if they don't have their own first picks.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I just think it's so just hate on the Nets. What is it? What do you think it matters? The Bulls would probably still won anyways. Just the fact that they have something to play for. The Nets really didn't have anything to play for. Let the young guys play and see what they got.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, but let's get into this this first matchup in the Eastern Conference, the 1-8, which is now going to be the Boston Celtics, who edged out the Cavs for the 1 seed, and the 8 seeded Chicago Bulls.
This is going to be an interesting matchup. I think this isn't our regular 1-8 matchup. A lot of these playoff series I wouldn't say are your normal matchups. I think the Bulls are still a pretty talented team. Obviously, they're getting Dwayne Wade back. They've been inconsistent all year. But I think they do have some good players, obviously, a Jimmy Butler, a Dwayne Wade. Maybe even Rondo is going to play great against his former Celtics team. And somebody like Robin Lopez can have an impact inside. I still like the Celtics in this series, but, for Boston to kind of get ready for the next few rounds.
Well, the first word that comes to mind for me is experience. And, Rondo's been in, championship. He's won a championship and been in big series. Obviously, you know about Dwayne Wade's history. And I think that could play to their advantage in maybe not winning the series, but surprising people. Obviously, talent-wise and matchup-wise, I think the Celtics have the advantage. And if you heard about my pick yesterday for Coach of the Year, I'm high on this team. But nobody on this team has played in the championship round. I don't even believe anybody's really been out of the first round. I have to look at their roster closely. But for me,
that's good. The Hawks.
So Al Horford's had some playoff success, but for the most part, still a young, upcoming team. And I think experience could play to the Bulls' favor. Home court advantage, and the fact that Boston's just flat out better, plays to their liking. But I think the Bulls are going to be, gritty in this series. I think the Celtics would have rather seen the Heat in the first round.
Yeah, I think they would have rather seen the Heat too. The Bulls have kind of played them tough all year. The season series was 2-2. I know the first 3 games were all, I think, decided by under 15 points or something like that. So I think it's going to be a great series, and I could easily see this one going further than people think. What's your pick on this?
Before I make my pick, I want to mention that I don't think this series is going to be quite as good as that. What was it? I think it was 2009, that Celtics-Bulls series that was just unbelievable. With I think that was when maybe Rose's rookie year or something like that. But that was a classic series early in the Celtics, their run with those guys and Rondo and whatever. But I'm going to go with the Celtics in 6, and I could definitely see it going to 7. But I think this is going to be one of those series that people overlook in the first round and could definitely be more competitive than people are led to believe.
People look at the 1-8 and they're like, oh, this is probably going to be a sweep for 5 games. But I agree with you. I think this is going to be Celtics in 6. I think the Bulls will be able to play them tough, but like you said, Boston's just a better team. They're also coached better too by Brad Stevens. So I think in their bench, I think is deeper too. Obviously, you don't play as many bench players in the playoffs, but I think this Celtics team definitely has some real potential in the postseason, and the Bulls are going to give them a good test in the first round to kind of get things warmed up.
Definitely, and I'm interested to see how Jimmy Butler plays. He's had obviously some playoff experience, but I'm interested to see with the combination of Rondo and Wade with their playoff experience, how that rubs off on Butler. And we've been critical of the Bulls for most of the year. I think we expected a little bit more from them. Maybe this is that opportunity to I guess not make up for it, because I don't see them winning the series, but a competitive series could go a long way in their psyche for the next.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you look at one thing, if you look at in the playoffs, you're thinking more ISO ball, just how it turns out to be. The game slows down. It looks like you got to make a lot of more one-on-one plays late in the shot clock. And if you look at the Celtics team and you look at the Bulls team definitely has more guys I think that they can create from themselves. If you look at Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade, both guys who've averaged over 20 points and they're good in the mid post. And if you look at the Celtics, you're looking for guys that's going to score on his own. You look at Isaiah Thomas, and a lot of those other guys really can't create from themselves as well. So, I mean, I think that's what kind of makes this a more intriguing series is what is Boston going to do if they take away IT?
Well, yeah, that's, I think, everybody's concern is that he has to do too much for them offensively. But I think the X factor in this series is going to be a guy like Jay Crowder. I mean, what are those valuable forwards or guard forwards going to do? Because they have a couple of guys like a Marcus Smart or Jay Crowder. They're going to need those guys to play big and play well defensively as well in the backcourt. Those guys, are going to be X factors for the Celtics in this series.
Like I mentioned, Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler, they're going to have to shut those guys down, kind of keep them calm. So, and for the Bulls team, they need someone to step up too. One of these bench guys, one of these 3-point shooters needs to come through. Maybe somebody like Mirotic have a consistent series for them to have any type of chance. Do you think a % chance that the Bulls could win the series?
Yeah, I do actually. And I wouldn't have said that. Like I said, I've mentioned the fact that if the Heat gotten in, I think this could have been over in 5. I like that matchup better for them. There are two guys throughout their careers that when the bright lights are on, and I call him prime time Rondo, as he's one of them, and we know what Wade could do. Those are two guys that when the bright lights are on, that when everybody's watching playoff basketball, big regular season game basketball, that are just better. And I think you're going to get. And obviously we know what Butler can do. So I think with those two guys and that kind of experience, I wouldn't count that team out. And I would give them about maybe a 15% chance, 10 to 15% chance of winning the series.
What would you do if all the games were on TNT? What type of % chance would you give the Bulls?
75. That's streak. Yeah, you know what, though? Games 1 and 2 are on TNT, but they're not at home. The Bulls are a lock to win Game 4 in Chicago. That's on TNT.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you on this, Harris. I don't maybe see 10 or 15% chance. I see under 10%, but I think I wouldn't be completely amazed. Are you serious? The Bulls just upset the Celtics? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's likely at all, but it's not the craziest thing I ever heard.
It's not quite like the next series we'll get into, the 2nd-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers against the 7th-seeded Indiana Pacers. This matchup is interesting, but at the same time, I don't see it going too deep. We know now Lance Stevenson back in Indiana, that's going to create some drama. LeBron has some experience against Paul George in the playoffs, and this one could be fun. But I'm sorry, Corey Waldron, I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, both these teams probably you could argue had disappointing seasons in the sense that the Cavs weren't really strong in the second half and the Pacers really didn't come through. I think it's intriguing because there's a lot of talent. The Pacers are probably talented than your regular 7 seed, but they're an inconsistent team. I'm agreeing with you. I think the Cavs are going to make work of the Pacers. I think that Paul George-LeBron matchup is going to be definitely a ton of fun to watch. And I don't think the games will be blowouts, but I think it's going to be too tough for the Pacers to overcome a team like Cleveland.
Yeah, the Cavs have been – it's almost like the Cavs have been putting off the regular season for a while, and they finally – Tristan Thompson sends out the tweet, can't wait, favorite time of year, can't wait for the playoffs. This is a team that it's like the kid that's really smart in school. He doesn't have to study. He shows up for the test. All right, the test is here.
Yeah,
The Cavs, the test is here, and now they get to show off a little bit of what they've been saving up for a while.
yeah, and you mentioned Tristan Thompson. I think he could have a big series because I don't see the Pacers as like a strong inside presence. You know, Miles Turner's still young. He's not an amazing rebounder, and Thad Young's not an amazing rebounder either. So Tristan Thompson really brings out that extra gear for the playoffs. And then next to a rebounder like Kevin Love, and then obviously LeBron at the small forward position, I think the boards will be something to keep an eye on in this series.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know what? The point for me is that if this Indiana team is going to have any chance, it's obviously going to take a monumental effort from Paul George. But keep an eye on Jeff Teague as well. He's somebody that
Teague's having a good year.
He's gone under the radar a little bit as a guard because of how loaded the NBA is right now in that position. But Jeff Teague has quietly had a solid season.
Yeah, no, he has. The one thing about this matchup is both him and Kyrie Irving are a little banged up. Teague, I think, sprained his ankle last night. It didn't look too bad, but just enough that'll bother him. And I know Kyrie has complained about knee soreness. So keep an eye on that matchup. The one issue I think for just, is going to be the depth of the Cavs. They can just throw so many different looks at you, and they have these veteran players that just come to play. I know Korver had some big games against the Pacers this year in the regular season.
Yeah, that game the other night, it's probably like a week ago, I think, maybe a little over a week ago, that LeBron and Paul George went back and forth. You'll see that in like 2 games in this series. You'll see, Paul George and LeBron dance, and it's going to be really fun, and it's going to be really entertaining. But I don't think anybody in their right mind. I would give the Bulls a much better chance than I'm giving Indiana right now. LeBron James is not getting sent home in the first round, folks.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I'm almost put at maybe 1% chance. The only chance of it happening is LeBron getting injured, just because I just can never imagine a situation where LeBron gets knocked out in the first round against a lesser team.
Yeah, 100%. So my prediction on this series, I'm going to be kind to the Indiana Pacers and give them 1 game. I know a lot of people out there might have this as a sweep. That might be a little bit disrespectful to the Pacers. Could I see it going 6?
George
and Paul George potentially going 6 in a weird scenario. This would be the shock of the postseason if it went any deeper than that. I'm going to take the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games.
We're agreeing a lot on this episode. The award show, we didn't agree so much, but I'm agreeing.
Hopefully that'll change soon.
Yeah, I think the Pacers, just like you said, don't really have enough firepower to match with the Cavs, and LeBron's not going to lose. Cavs in 5, they need that extra rest, as noted in that end of the regular season. LeBron has played a lot of minutes, including that game against the Pacers late in the season. So I think Paul George will do enough to win them a game. Like you said, could they win? Could they push it to 6? Yeah, they could. 7, I don't think so.
Yeah, and I think the Stevenson LeBron stuff will be kind of fun too, like the antics that went viral a couple years ago in the playoffs with Lee Stevenson blowing his ear. That's one guy that's probably like his job. Like they'll be in the locker room before the game, like, dude, just try to get to LeBron, man. Like just try to get to this guy, and whatever you have to do. I mean, I almost feel like he was like kind of brought in to do that. It's almost like that's what his role has been relegated to, is mess with the other team's best player.
Yeah, I mean, and he does bring some energy and toughness to the team. They haven't been great at that 2-guard spot, so he kind of brings something there at least. And his best place for Lance is in Indiana. So, and next to Paul George, I think they have a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, so that series starts. That's going to be the first game on Saturday on ABC, and both
games. Even though we don't think it'll be a close series, I think the games will still be pretty interesting and pretty fun to watch. And stuff, and then the Paul George and LeBron matchup's always something to keep an eye on. And like I said, it's not like the Pacers are a terrible team. They don't have any talented players. They have they have some good starters in Jeff Teague, Paul George, Thad Young, and Miles Turner. So it's not like they're throwing out nobody.
Yeah, are you gonna go with Cavs in 5 as well? You said.
I'm going Cavs in 5 as well.
All right, so we're on to the Toronto Raptors and Milwaukee Bucks. To me, the most intriguing, potentially entertaining first-round series in the Eastern Conference, just because I want to see the Bucks, play well. I've been, an advocate of this young squad, and I'm a big Giannis fan. I know you are too. So the 3rd-seeded Raptors, 6th-seeded Bucks. Jason Kidd back in the playoffs in Milwaukee. Last time, not a great showing a couple years ago, as we know. And the Raptors out to prove that they can get back to the Eastern Conference Finals.
This is going to be a fun series to watch. The Raptors aren't 100% right now. Lowry's come back, I think, the last week of the season, so he's still finding his groove. The Bucks have picked it up later in the season. Giannis has been a freak all year. Chris Middleton came back strong. Good lineups at you. Definitely see this being a fun series. And DeMar DeRozan, like we mentioned on the show before, has been flying under the radar all season, lighting it up. And he I think this could be a big postseason for him. Him and Lowry have struggled in the past in the postseason. DeRozan's kind of found his rhythm a little bit more, but the success he's had this year and his game fits well for the playoffs. You know, you need those ISO plays, those mid-range jump shots, and that's right up DeRozan's alley.
Toronto kind of had like a weird postseason last year. You saw Lowry and DeRozan struggle a little bit, and then they kind of found it, but it was like a struggle early. They still got through a couple of those series, and they had the Cavs, I wouldn't say on the ropes, but they had them tied at 2. I'm not sure how much I like them getting to the Eastern Conference Finals again, but I don't think this is going to be that tough of a matchup for them. And I'm gonna side to Toronto. It's going to be a tough series, but I don't think this is a team that's going to challenge them as much as maybe the Wizards, or well, not the Wizards, but the Hawks, or possibly even the Pacers. I don't think this is a matchup that's going to challenge the Raptors much.
Raptors also have some nice depth, and they have a nice front court in Jonas Valanciunas and Serge Ibaka, and they kind of have that rotation of DeMar Carroll and PJ Tucker to throw out there too. And I think that'll help them inside, where they can really have the Bucks don't really play huge. Greg Monroe's been pretty good for the Bucks off the bench this year, but it's not like, they're really intimidating inside. They have some issues inside. But the one thing the Bucks have going for them is Giannis is pretty much a mismatch for almost every team in the league. I mean, I think they have enough to make it fun, but it's in series 3-1. So I expect something similar in the playoffs.
Yeah, the winner of this would get the winner of Cleveland, Indiana. I'm just trying to picture these matchups, but I'm going to go with the Raptors in 6. But I think Milwaukee could steal one in Toronto, and then Toronto will regain control of this series. But Milwaukee fans are going to be excited having that, having the playoffs back there again. And like you said, the Greek Freak at any given moment is the most dangerous player on the floor. But something tells me that Toronto will be able to escape here.
I think the Bucks, win a game or two, and like you said, I'm going with the Raptors in 6 as well. I think it's just an easy choice here. I don't see the Bucks being able to push them to 7, and I don't see the Raptors being able to just wipe them away. Like I said, I think they're going to throw some weird lineups. That length is definitely something that they can kind of be difficult to deal with in the playoffs when the game slows down.
Yeah, I don't know how many upsets you're going to see in the Eastern Conference this year.
What would you put at the percentage of this one as an upset? Could you see the Bucks beating the Raptors?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's not really an imposing team for them. Somebody that's going to give them that much trouble. Like I said, I put it at 30%, maybe 25%.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of starting to build a little bit more respect. When I look at that team, they've been in the playoffs a few seasons now. They've been a top seed the last few years. This team's played together. They added some veterans, and I would probably go less than 30%. I'll probably go. I'll show the Raptors some good respect, and I'll get it maybe a 15% chance, maybe for the Bucks, maybe even less.
Well, what happened the last time that the Raptors were a 3 seed? Do you remember?
They lost to the Nets, correct?
Was that the series that the Nets beat them and then went on to play the Heat? Yeah.
Yep. That Nets team, though, was really weird in the fact that they were terrible for the first chunk of the season. And all of a sudden on January 1st, they completely turned around after Joe Johnson hit a buzzer beater against OKC. And that team just became, I think they had one of the best records in the NBA in the second half of the season. So that's kind of weird. I don't think the Bucks are quite like the Nets in that sense, and they don't really have the veteran guys that kind of scare you.
Well, let's look at this last Eastern Conference series, the 4-5. The Wizards, who at one point looked like could be the 2 seed, bumped down to the 4 seed to play the Atlanta Hawks. And we've been high on Wall all year long, and we know what the Wizards are capable of. We've talked about how we're not so confident in their bench and that this is not a very deep basketball team, but they face an Atlanta team that if you call the most confusing team in all of basketball.
Yeah, Atlanta definitely is the most confusing team because like 1 week they're terrible. The next week they're beating the Cavs twice and the Celtics once. Who is this Hawks team? Who are we going to see on a regular basis? And the funny thing about this matchup is, the Wizards have a pretty good offense and inconsistent defense, and the Hawks, on the other hand, don't have a great offense, and their defense has been top 5 in defensive rating this season. So it's like weakness versus strength. I think the one thing about the Wizards, you look at this team, I look at them and I see defensive potential, and I just think they're inconsistent. But when I look at the squad, I see John Wall, who can be a great defender. Bradley Beal can play as a great defender. Otto Porter can be a great defender. Markieff Morris can even match up in the right situations, be a good defender. And Marcin Gortat, if you have like a bigger center like Dwight Howard, someone who's going to probably be a more favorable matchup than somebody who's pulling Gortat out to the three-point line. So matchup for the Wizards, I think that they just match up well with Atlanta, and Atlanta's lack of offensive firepower hurts them in the series.
And it pains me to say that we might be agreeing on all 4 of these first-round matchups. The Wizards in 7, though. I think that Atlanta is going to be able to stretch them out a little bit. And like you said, beating the Cavs twice, and I think they're going to, like they played the end of the regular season. Yeah, Dwight's been up and down. Millsap's been their best player, but they've gotten some good play out of Hardaway Jr. Schroeder's been pretty good. This is a team that's like an energetic. They need they'll feed off the crowd's energy. They'll win some home games. I can see this thing going the distance, but Washington having that Game 7 at home, I think, is going to make a difference.
I guess we'll probably we'll slightly disagree on this one. I think I'm going to go with the Wizards in 6. I think they're a better team, and the Hawks, like you said, kind of have to rely on being that gritty team. But almost every team is gritty when it comes to the postseason because everybody's fighting for the loose balls, especially a team like Washington. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Washington was knocked out by Atlanta 2 years ago, the last time they were in the postseason. So there could be a little bit of extra juice right there.
Yeah, I could see that. I definitely could see that. But for me, this series is going to come down to the fact that John Wall is hungry. John Wall and Bradley Beal are hungry to have some playoff success, and they've been to the second round once, maybe, I want to say.
Once.
So this is a team that is definitely
twice.
This is a team that's definitely hungry for some playoff success, and to get the opportunity to now have to avoid. I know we talk about this a lot. Now they avoid Cleveland to potentially the Eastern Conference Finals. This could be your sleeper to make a run to the Eastern Conference Final. I won't get into deeper in the second round picks and beyond. No, we're just taking a look at these first round matchups. But I think that's a break for them. They caught there that if they happen to the big bad Cavs aren't looking over their shoulder.
And I mean, if you want to face the best team in your conference, you want to face them in the conference finals. You know what I mean? You don't want to face them in the second round. You want to face them when they're a little bit banged up. By the time you meet them in the Eastern Conference Finals, they're already going to have to face 2 other teams, and Toronto is not going to fall down against them. But we'll save the second round talk for probably like 2 weeks away on another podcast because we still got to see what happens for these next 7 games and who's hurt, who's healthy, who's looking great, who's finding their rhythm, who's in a slump. All types of little things that you don't really pay attention to. You pay attention to a little bit more in the playoffs, and smaller things can have a bigger impact in less games.
Yeah, and you were right. In 15 and 14, they didn't make the playoffs in 16, but in 15 and 14, they lost the Eastern Conference semis both years. So you were right about that in the Wizards having some first-round success, but being bounced in the second round 2 years in a row under Whitman, and now Brooks comes in and they have their most wins in I don't know if it's franchise history, but it's been a while. It's been 20 plus years since this team's won this many games.
You talked about the bench. They picked up Bojan Bogdanovic, and he's kind of known as Big Shot Bojan in the Olympics for Croatia. So maybe he can step up big for them in the postseason, give him that deadly three-point shooter. If he gets hot, that could be another nice addition for them in the future rounds.
Yeah, for sure. I know the Nets love is there. They gotta find a way, man. They gotta find a way, and hopefully he could provide some of that spark that they need. And it's going to take it. Someone's got to take the pressure off of those guys. Someone's got to give those guys a break from the amount of responsibility that they have.
And for Atlanta, I just think someone needs to step up other than Paul Millsap and be that true, like, second option of that guy that can create for himself. Tim Hardaway Jr. has done that at times, but he hasn't been consistent with that. And this postseason could be big for him because, if I'm not mistaken, he's a free agent at the end of the year. So look for him to kind of bring a little bit extra energy in the series too.
Definitely. So that wraps it up for us on the Eastern Conference side. Be sure to tune into our Western Conference preview as well. And definitely
just to recap our picks for you.
Okay, right. Okay, let's recap them.
We're agreeing on every series. The only difference is between the Wizards and Hawks and the amount of games that it's going to take. Completely exciting, but I don't see any of these series really being terrible to watch. Also, a ton of playoff previews on OTGbasketball.com. We got a ton of articles. We're going to be hitting you with a ton of content all postseason. And that wraps it up for today. Harris, great show. Like you said, we're on to the Western Conference. And as always, hit that subscribe button and follow us on Twitter at OTGbasketball.com. Have a great night, guys.
Enjoy the games, guys.